My brother stalked and assaulted my girlfriend at a wedding. The second Victoria, 25F, my girlfriend, walked in. Samuel instantly started acting inappropriately. He practically shoved our mom aside so he could be the first to hug her, holding on way too long until Victoria had to physically step back. Throughout dinner, he kept finding excuses to touch her arm or shoulder, cracking these fake inside jokes that didn't even make sense since they'd literally just met, and pushing past me multiple times just to sit next to her. It all came to a head when he tried to feed her from his own fork, while staring at her with this intense eye contact. Victoria was clearly uncomfortable, but kept being polite since it was our first family gathering, and she wanted to make a good impression. Meanwhile, Samuel spent the entire evening dragging me down with twisted childhood stories meant to humiliate me. At one point, he even told this completely fabricated story about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my so-called emotional abuse, which never happened. Victoria knew it was all lies because I'd already told her the real stories from my teenage years. But my parents? They just sat there nodding along like everything Samuel said was gospel. After dinner, things got worse. Victoria offered to help clean up while I helped my dad move some boxes in the garage. A few minutes later, I realized I hadn't seen her in a while, so I went looking. I found her in the kitchen, cornered by Samuel, who was blocking her path to the door. He had her trapped by the sink, standing way too close, one hand on the counter next to her hip. He was telling her she deserved someone more exciting than me, his boring, unstable older brother. Victoria had already told him to back off twice before I walked in. When she saw me, she looked so relieved and immediately came to stand by my side. Samuel just laughed it off like it was some big joke, but I could feel Victoria trembling. We've been together for 8 months, and everything was perfect, until Samuel decided to wreck our lives with his obsessive behavior. Some background might help explain how things got this way. Samuel and I grew up in an upper-middle-class family in a small town in Minnesota. Our parents both work in real estate and made good money, but they cared more about appearances than actual family relationships. Samuel was born when I was 3, and from the second he arrived, he became the golden child. Nothing he did was ever wrong. Somehow, everything was always my fault. The red flags were there early on. When he was 6, he smashed my gaming console because I wouldn't let him play. Instead of punishing him, my parents bought him his own and scolded me for not sharing. At 12, he killed my pet hamster by feeding it chocolate, fully knowing it was toxic. My parents called it an accident and blamed me for not watching the hamster better. In high school, he spread rumors that I was cheating on my girlfriend, which led her to dump me. My parents excused it, saying he was just being protective of her. This same pattern followed into adulthood. Samuel still lives with my parents, works at my dad's real estate office, and basically does whatever he wants. He sabotaged almost every relationship I've ever had. With one girlfriend, he told her family I had a gambling addiction, completely false. With another, he told her I had cheated on every girl I'd ever dated, also false. Every time, my parents defended him or accused me of exaggerating. When I met Victoria, I decided to handle things differently. For the first 3 months, I kept our relationship completely secret from my family to protect her from Samuel's usual sabotage. Victoria is honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's brilliant, compassionate, and works as a pediatric nurse at our local hospital. We met at the hospital cafe. I was visiting a coworker who had surgery, and she was on her lunch break. We bonded over complaining about the awful hospital coffee. After a few more coffee chats, we started dating, and everything just clicked. Victoria already knew all about my family dynamic because I wanted her prepared. She's the kind of person who always tries to see the best in others, and she encouraged me to finally introduce her, thinking maybe things would be different now that we're adults. I finally gave in and agreed to a family dinner last month. That's when everything started unraveling. A few days later, Victoria began getting strange calls and texts from unknown numbers. At first it was just heavy breathing or immediate hang-ups whenever she answered. Then they started leaving increasingly creepy voicemails, calling her stuck up and frigid for rejecting a better option. Some messages mentioned specific details about her work schedule and what she was wearing that day, proving someone was watching her. Victoria didn't make the connection at first, but I recognized some of the voices as Samuel's old high school friends. The group of guys who still hang around him and do whatever he says because his parents bankroll him. When Victoria blocked those numbers, they just called from new ones. Then Samuel's friends started showing up at the hospital, pretending to be visitors, but loitering in the pediatric ward where Victoria works. They would stare at her for hours and make comments just loud enough for her to hear. Last week, one of them followed her to her car after a night shift. She was so scared she called me crying from the car, too afraid to drive home in case someone was tailing her. I had to go pick her up. I drove her car home while a friend followed behind to make sure we weren't being followed. Victoria has started having panic attacks before shifts, and her coworkers have noticed something is wrong. Yesterday, I finally collected enough proof to confront them directly. I had recordings of the voicemails, screenshots of the texts, and security camera footage from the hospital showing his friends stalking Victoria. I went to my parents' house, where Samuel still lives, and showed him everything. He just sat there with a smug smirk. When I finished, he looked me dead in the eye and said he had no idea what I was talking about, then added that maybe if Victoria wasn't such a stuck-up bitch, people wouldn't feel the need to teach her a lesson. Something in me snapped. I punched him in the face. Samuel immediately started wailing like I'd tried to kill him, even though it was barely a bloody nose. Our parents came running and, of course, lost it at me, not at Samuel. They didn't even look at the evidence I was trying to show them. Mom was hysterical about her baby boy being attacked, while Dad accused me of being jealous and said I needed professional help for my anger issues. Mom even suggested Victoria had led Samuel on at dinner and was playing the victim because she got caught flirting. Dad told me to get out of his house and not come back until I'd apologized to Samuel and gotten my head straight. I'm writing this from Victoria's apartment, where I've been staying since last night. She finally fell asleep in the other room after crying for hours. She's terrified to go to work tomorrow. Her supervisor has been understanding so far, but Victoria worries she'll lose her job if this keeps escalating. She loves working with the kids in the pediatric ward and shouldn't have to give that up because of my psychotic brother. I just don't know what to do anymore. Every time I think Samuel can't stoop any lower, he proves me wrong. Our parents are completely enabling his behavior and gaslighting both me and Victoria about what's happening. The police won't do anything without more concrete evidence linking Samuel directly to the harassment. Victoria is living in fear, her job might be at risk, and my family is acting like we're the ones causing problems. Has anyone dealt with something like this? How do I protect Victoria while dealing with my toxic family? Should I be doing more to document everything that's happening? Any advice would be appreciated because I'm at my wit's end here. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading all your responses helped me realize how serious this situation really is. Victoria and I have been trying to follow the advice many of you gave about documenting everything and taking legal action. Unfortunately, things have only gotten worse over the past 2 weeks, and I need to vent about what's been happening. We followed the advice about going to the police. Victoria and I spent hours compiling evidence, screenshots of all the threatening texts, recordings of the voicemails, and security footage from the hospital showing Samuel's friends lurking around. We also had written statements from 3 of Victoria's co-workers who witnessed the stalking behavior. The police officer we spoke to seemed concerned at first, especially about the workplace harassment, but then everything got complicated. It turns out Samuel's best friend, Tyler, one of the main guys involved in harassing Victoria, is the son of a local police sergeant. When we mentioned Tyler's name, the officer's whole attitude changed. He started saying that without direct proof that Samuel was orchestrating everything, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested that maybe Victoria was misinterpreting friendly attention from guys who were just hanging around the hospital for legitimate reasons. He even had the nerve to ask if Victoria might have encouraged their attention somehow. We asked to speak to a different officer, preferably a female officer, but they gave us the runaround. Eventually, they said they would issue warnings to the people we could identify from the security footage, but that was the most they could do without concrete evidence of actual threats. It felt like a complete waste of time. My parents' reaction was even worse than I expected. The day after we went to the police, Samuel showed up at their house with a black eye, claiming I had attacked him again. I hadn't even seen him since the night I punched him 2 weeks ago, but of course my parents immediately believed him. My mom called me, crying hysterically about how I was out of control and trying to destroy Samuel's life. She said that going to the police proved I was deliberately trying to ruin his future over a silly misunderstanding. Then my dad called. He was furious. He threatened to cut me off financially, which would have been scary if I still depended on them. Thankfully, I have a good job in software development and my own apartment. He also threatened to fire me from the family real estate business, forgetting that I've never actually worked there. That's Samuel's job. It really showed how they don't even see me as my own person, just as an extension of Samuel's life. The real disaster happened last weekend. My mom kept calling and texting, saying they wanted to fix things as a family. She promised that Samuel was sorry about everything and wanted to apologize to both me and Victoria. She said they had talked to him about boundaries and that he understood he had been inappropriate. After talking it over with Victoria, we decided to give them one chance to make things right. That was a huge mistake. We arrived at my parents' house for what was supposed to be a family dinner to patch things up. As soon as we walked in, I knew something was wrong. The house was full of people, my parents, Samuel, our aunt and uncle who always take Samuel's side, and worst of all, Tyler and 2 other guys who had been stalking Victoria at work. My mom called it a family intervention. For 2 hours, they all took turns attacking Victoria's character, while Samuel sat there looking smug. My mom went on this long rant about how Victoria was obviously jealous of Samuel's good looks and success. What success? And had been flirting with him at dinner that first night. She said Victoria was making up the harassment because she felt guilty about leading Samuel on and was trying to cover her tracks. My aunt suggested that Victoria was probably used to getting attention from guys at work and had misinterpreted friendly behavior as stalking because she had a guilty conscience. Samuel played his part perfectly, acting all sad and confused about why Victoria would make up such horrible lies about him. He kept saying things like how much he had looked forward to having a sister-in-law and how hurt he was that she would try to turn me against him. Tyler and his friends backed him up, swearing they had only gone to the hospital because they were visiting Tyler's sick grandmother, who apparently moves between different floors and departments every day. The worst part was when they started questioning Victoria's mental stability. They brought up how she sometimes works night shifts, suggesting that maybe sleep deprivation was making her paranoid. They talked about how stressful it must be working with sick children, implying that maybe she was projecting her work stress onto innocent interactions with Samuel and his friends. My mom even had the audacity to recommend a therapist who could help Victoria work through her tendency to create drama. Victoria tried to defend herself at first, calmly explaining the harassment and showing them the texts and voicemails again, but they talked over her, dismissed her evidence as misunderstandings, or suggested she had somehow provoked everything. When Tyler started describing in detail what Victoria had been wearing on specific days at work, proving he had been stalking her, my parents acted like this was evidence that Victoria had been trying to attract attention. It all became too much when they invited Tyler and his friends to join us for dessert, saying they wanted to show us what nice young men they really were. Victoria started having trouble breathing and had to leave the room. When I tried to go after her, my mom grabbed my arm and said it was time for me to choose between my real family and a girl who was obviously unstable and trying to cause problems. I chose Victoria. We left immediately, and I haven't spoken to my family since that night. Samuel's friends have gotten bolder with their harassment, now spreading rumors at Victoria's workplace about her being mentally unstable and having a history of making false accusations. Her supervisor called her in for a meeting yesterday to discuss concerns about workplace drama. Even though he seemed sympathetic, he warned her that all the disruption was starting to affect her job performance and suggested she might want to consider transferring to a different department or hospital. We've hired a lawyer who is helping us pursue restraining orders, but it's a slow process. Victoria has been looking into positions at other hospitals, and one of her former colleagues has offered to help her get a job at a hospital in a city about 300 miles away. I hate that we're being forced to consider such drastic measures, but I can't stand seeing Victoria so scared and stressed all the time. She cries before every shift now, and she's lost weight because she's too anxious to eat properly. I just don't know what to do anymore. Every attempt to handle this reasonably has backfired. My family is completely delusional, the police are useless, and it feels like Samuel is winning. How do you fight back when everyone is determined to believe the worst about you and the best about your abuser? Update 2. I wish I was posting with better news, but everything has completely fallen apart after what happened at my cousin Holly's wedding last weekend. I've been trying to process everything for the past few days before writing this update. What was supposed to be a happy family celebration turned into an absolute nightmare that ended with Samuel in handcuffs and our family permanently divided. Some context first. Holly has always been the only family member besides my grandfather who saw through Samuel's act. When we were kids, she caught Samuel torturing her cat and told everyone, but my parents convinced the family that she was lying for attention. She's never forgotten that, and she's been firmly on my side through this whole situation with Victoria. She even wrote a detailed statement for our lawyer about Samuel's history of concerning behavior. When Holly sent us the wedding invitation, Victoria and I were hesitant to attend, but Holly called us personally and promised that she had only invited Samuel because her parents insisted, and that she had hired extra security specifically to watch him. She also seated us at a table with her husband's family, far away from my parents and Samuel. We thought with all the witnesses around and security present, Samuel wouldn't try anything stupid. We were wrong. The ceremony went fine, mainly because Samuel was busy being one of the groomsmen. Holly's husband is our cousin on the other side of the family and didn't know about any of the drama. At the reception, everything seemed okay at first. Samuel was sitting at the family table with our parents, and we were across the room with Holly's in-laws. Victoria was finally starting to relax and enjoy herself for the first time in weeks. Around 9 p.m., Victoria went to use the bathroom. She'd been gone maybe 10 minutes when I noticed Samuel wasn't at his table anymore. Something felt wrong, so I went to check on Victoria. As I was walking toward the bathrooms, I heard Victoria scream. I started running, and that's when Holly's husband Miller and his brother turned the corner ahead of me. They found Samuel pinning Victoria against the wall in the hallway outside the bathrooms, trying to force himself on her while she struggled. He had one hand over her mouth, and the other gripping her arms so hard it left bruises. Miller and his brother pulled Samuel off Victoria just as I got there. Victoria was shaking and crying, her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there were visible bruises forming on her arms. Samuel was obviously drunk and started yelling about how Victoria had been teasing him all night. She literally hadn't gone near him, and how she had followed him to the hallway. She was there first. Miller's brother, who's a cop in another city, immediately called the local police while Miller helped Victoria to a private room where Holly and her mom were trying to calm her down. Here's where everything got even worse, if that's possible. When the police arrived, my parents tried to stop them from arresting Samuel. My mom was screaming about how it was all a misunderstanding, that Victoria must have led Samuel on, and that they shouldn't ruin his life over a little drunken mistake. My dad actually tried to physically prevent the officers from handcuffing Samuel, saying they needed to handle this as a family matter. Samuel switched between crying about how Victoria had seduced him and threatening everyone, saying none of us understood what he was capable of. He looked completely unhinged. When they were finally putting him in the police car, He started shouting that Victoria was a slut who had been asking for it since the first time they met. Several guests recorded the whole meltdown on their phones. The aftermath has been brutal. My parents are on a rampage, calling everyone in the family to spread their version of events. According to them, Victoria lured Samuel to a secluded area, made advances on him, then screamed assault when he rejected her. They're saying she orchestrated the whole thing to get revenge on Samuel for exposing her lies about the harassment. They're even claiming that Miller and his brother roughed Samuel up before the police arrived. They didn't. And that Victoria gave herself the bruises. The one positive development is that Holly's wedding video caught Samuel following Victoria to the bathroom on camera. Between that, the bruises, multiple witnesses, and the videos of Samuel's meltdown during the arrest, our lawyer says we have a solid case. Several relatives who were at the wedding have come forward with statements about Samuel's behavior throughout the night, including him making crude comments about Victoria and following her around the reception. My parents are now threatening to disown me if Victoria doesn't drop the charges. They've been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between guilt trips about destroying the family and threats about ruining my inheritance. They even showed up at my apartment yesterday, causing such a scene that my neighbors called the police. My mom was crying about how I was sending her baby to jail, while my dad threatened to make sure I never work in this state again. Victoria and I have made our decision. She accepted the job offer at the hospital 300 miles away, and I've arranged to work remotely for my company. We're moving at the end of next month. A lot of people might think we're running away, but we just need to get away from all this toxicity and start fresh somewhere else. Holly understands and has promised to keep us updated about any family developments we need to know about. The hardest part in all this is knowing that my family will never admit Samuel needs help. Even after watching him assault someone at a wedding in front of witnesses, they're still defending him and blaming the victim. I've wondered if anything would have been different if someone had stepped in when we were kids, but I guess we'll never know. Right now, I just need to focus on protecting Victoria and building our new life together, far away from Samuel and my parents' enabling behavior. Update 3. I wasn't planning to post another update, but something happened yesterday that I feel like I need to share. After 4 years of blessed silence from my family, I received a hysterical phone call from my mom that honestly left me feeling both vindicated and deeply sad. First, a quick update on where things stand with Victoria and me. We got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony with Holly's family and Victoria's relatives. We bought a house in our new city, and Victoria is now the head pediatric nurse at her hospital. I'm still working remotely for the same company, but got promoted to senior developer last year. We're expecting our first child, a little girl, in 3 months. Life has been peaceful and happy, which makes what I'm about to share even more disturbing. Yesterday afternoon, I was in a meeting when my phone started blowing up with calls from my mom. I usually ignore unknown numbers since my family tends to get new phones to try to contact us, but this time she left a voicemail that sounded really desperate. When I called back, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. It turns out Samuel got married last year to a woman named Rachel. None of us knew about it because we've had no contact with that side of the family since the wedding incident. Apparently, Samuel met Rachel at church, and their families arranged the marriage pretty quickly. My mom was babbling about how perfect everything was, how Samuel had finally found a good Christian woman who understood him, and how they were all so happy, until last week. Last Thursday, Rachel's coworker called the police after Rachel missed 3 days of work. When officers did a welfare check, they found Rachel with severe injuries. She had 2 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and bruises all over her body. But here's the part that really got me. When the police investigated, they discovered that my dad had been helping Samuel cover up for the abuse for months. Rachel finally broke down and told the police everything. Samuel had started hitting her just 2 months into their marriage. Every time she threatened to leave or tell someone, my dad would step in. He used his connections in real estate to pressure Rachel's family about their mortgage, or he'd threatened to get her fired from her job at one of his friends' companies. He even convinced Rachel's parents that she was mentally unstable and just making up stories, using the same tactics they once used against Victoria. The final incident happened after Rachel got a promotion at work, which would have given her financial independence. Samuel completely lost it and beat her so badly she couldn't even go in. When she called my dad for help, he told her to put some ice on it and remember her wedding vows. That's when her coworker got involved and called the police. Both Samuel and my dad were arrested. Samuel for domestic violence. My dad for witness intimidation and conspiracy. My mom wanted me to come back and help deal with everything. She kept saying family needs to stick together, that Samuel and dad needed my support, and that Rachel was just exaggerating things like Victoria supposedly had. I lost it. I told her exactly how I felt about her enabling Samuel his entire life. I reminded her of what they did to Victoria, how they still supported Samuel even after watching him assault her at Holly's wedding. I asked her if she ever once thought about how things might have been different if they'd gotten Samuel help when he was younger, or held him accountable. Maybe Rachel wouldn't be in the hospital right now. My mom broke down. She admitted they always knew Samuel had problems, but thought they were protecting him by covering things up. Too little, too late. I hung up and blocked her new number. Later, Holly filled me in on more details. Rachel's parents are devastated. They feel horrible for not believing her sooner, but now they're fully supporting her pressing charges against both Samuel and my dad. The police are also investigating other potential victims since several of Samuel's exes have come forward with similar stories of abuse and stalking. Victoria suggested we reach out to Rachel through Holly, just to let her know she's not alone. She pointed out how much it helped her to have support when she dealt with Samuel. We'll probably do that. Some people think I'm being cold toward my parents, but I've learned that enabling toxic behavior only creates more victims. My family had countless chances to change, and they chose not to. They can deal with the consequences now without me. My focus is on protecting my wife, our unborn daughter, and the peaceful life we've built far away from that toxicity. Update 4, 6 months later. Victoria and I welcomed our daughter, Emma, 3 months ago. She's perfectly healthy and absolutely beautiful. Being parents has been amazing, and it's only reinforced that cutting contact with my toxic family was the right choice. Holly and her husband visited last month to meet Emma, and watching them with her just showed me what real family love looks like. As for Samuel and my dad, Samuel took a plea deal last month. He's getting 8 years in prison for aggravated domestic violence, with the possibility of parole after 5. My dad's case is still ongoing, but his license is suspended, and most of his business partners have already cut ties with him. His lawyers are apparently trying to negotiate a deal too. The biggest surprise has been my mom. After our last call, she actually started therapy. According to Holly, she moved out of the family home and even filed for divorce from my dad. Last week, she sent me a 12-page letter apologizing for everything, enabling Samuel, not protecting me as a kid, and especially for how they treated Victoria. She admitted that she and my dad basically created the monster Samuel became by never holding him accountable. I haven't responded yet. Part of me appreciates the honesty, but where was this insight when Samuel was torturing animals as a kid? Or stalking Victoria? Or when they watched him assault her at Holly's wedding? It feels too late. Victoria and I are still debating whether we'd ever allow a call. Rachel, on the other hand, is doing better. She moved in with her sister in another state and is going through intensive therapy. She filed for divorce and is fully cooperating with prosecutors. Apparently, several other women from his past, including 2 from his church, have also come forward with abuse stories. Rachel's parents are now fully supportive. They even publicly apologized to her and have started working with domestic violence organizations to help other families spot the signs earlier. The extended family is split. Most younger relatives and cousins are on our side and Rachel's. But the older generation is still making excuses for Samuel and my dad. Holly's mom actually started a family therapy group for those who want to understand how things got so bad, and how to break the cycle for future generations. As for me and Victoria, we're focused on Emma and our life here. Victoria just went back to work part-time and was promoted to director of pediatric nursing. I'm still working remotely, but I've been considering starting my own software consulting business. We've built a wonderful community here with friends who feel like chosen family. Sometimes I think about reaching out to my mom, but then I look at Emma and imagine my parents insisting I let Samuel be around her, because he deserved another chance. That thought alone confirms we made the right choice. The cycle of abuse and enabling in my family ends with me. Emma will grow up surrounded by healthy relationships and people who respect boundaries. Sometimes cutting off toxic family is the best thing you can do for your kids, even if it hurts.